there are many, many factors which make describing the stateless state really difficult. And of course the primary one is that it's so simple. It's so simple that it's extraordinarily difficult to talk about. Let's see, but we'll try. See, it's this moment without any thoughts or judgments, any thoughts about this moment believed. And when we've taken this journey through to a kind of completion, in one sense, we are standing upon a veritable mountain of beliefs and judgments and opinions which we have seen through. We have seen their falsity. We have seen through a mountain of illusions. And this is where this sense of freedom comes from. And this is where power comes from. Not that we have gained power, but we have freed the power we always had up. It's no longer tied into all these, tied into the dream state, tied into all these beliefs and illusions. So while the journey can seem and at times be and certainly feel very complex. The result is so extraordinarily simple that that it makes description quite difficult. One of the funny facts, of course, about the dream state is that dreaming as we may be, we continue to move and are directed in many ways through our lives by a higher force, if you will. And this leads to lots of confusion for the little me, if you will, which is always scrambling to explain why we're doing this or that, to make sense out of our lives. To fit our actions into its narrative. And there is a certain freedom that comes from not believing all the stories of the dream state. There's a freedom that comes from that, which allows our actions to be different than they once were or might have been. And it's also a freedom that is different than the small self might think of freedom being. You might have a conception of freedom being. The a common conception of the dream self, the small self, the ego, of course, is that Freedom means that we can do anything. We can be anyone. We can move through life in absolutely any way we might want. But that is not the experience of freedom. The real experience of freedom, of truth, of truthful freedom, if you will, is a freedom to be ourselves. Our purest expression of ourselves, if you will. And it's not a freedom to do any damned thing we please. Yeah, it's a freedom that shares a lot more in common with a word like embodiment. And it's a freedom that's often, here's a tricky one, language-wise. It's less concerned with what we do than where we do it from and how we are. And what we do flows from how we are and what we know ourselves to be. Flows from consciousness, right? A consciousness that is no longer divided. A consciousness unhindered. Or we could say less hindered by illusion. There's always conditioning, tendencies, sort of basic patterns that have been imprinted upon us by our individual lives. And these will continue to soften and their hard edges get rounded off as we live consciously, as we are what we are. The freedom of this moment beyond belief and judgment about it. It's a lot less sexy than many descriptions of the stateless state. You know, never-ending bliss and all that. Orgasms forever. But that's okay. Because it's truth we're interested in, right? Not I mean, if truth turns out to be never-ending orgasms, great. might shorten the lifespan of a human considerably, but yeah. What if you got that never-ending orgasm, but it only lasted for 10 minutes? Would you trade the truth for it? Because at the end of that 10 minutes, you were dead. the simplicity of truth. Calls to mind for me the story. Oh, jeez, I'm gonna screw this one up with my poor memory, but I believe it's a Hindu story about yeah, which which deity. Well, anyways, the point of the story, of course, is that the gods are deciding where to hide man's ultimate nature, the Godhead, if you will, and they're talking about different places, top of the mountains, bottom of the sea, caves, maybe outer space. And every suggestion that's come up with is vetoed because it's decided like, well, eventually, man will go there. It's just in the nature of humankind to explore. And so eventually that mountaintop will be reached, and eventually the seabed will be explored, and the cave mapped, discovered, and outer space conquered as well. And so in the end, of course, they decide that the safest place, the most hidden place, is within man itself. Because why would we ever look there? And of course, this is where language falls down. Because within is not exactly right. It does a good job of pointing to something that's not without. It's not outside of ourselves. It points somewhere else than outside. But we don't have words for things which are not inside and not outside. And problem with a more accurate word like all, A-L-L, all, right, is that it's so general as to be almost useless. And it's so vast. All. That our brains, our consciousness has a hard time. Such a hard time grappling with it. How vast all is, and how all encompassing all is, that we just don't even bother. All is so big and so vast. That it can only be experienced in any kind of real or complete way by itself. And in one sense, one could spend the rest of their life in total silence. Absorbed in meditation, with only one goal for the rest of their lives: to feel and experience as much of all as one human being possibly could. And yet, even if one were to do that, it would still be the smallest fraction. Even if one stretched out their consciousness to experience the touch upon universes, suns, planets, comets, whole galaxies, it would still only be the smallest drop of the infinite that was experienced. And this, of course, is another reason why what we are defies description, can never be described in words, and has to be experienced by itself, because words are so limited. That they can't actually give us an experience of something as vast as the all. They can merely point to it, as a finger points to the moon. And as we fall deeper and deeper into the all, inevitably we are engulfed more and more with greater and greater depth into silence. A silence which a profound silence. A silence which has nothing to do with the mind's conception of silence. A silence which is at once ourselves and everything and empty of self. A silence beyond time and space. A silence capable of movement and action and insight a silence intelligent a silence which is intelligence itself. and does not require language. Words or concepts for its comprehension or own understanding, and yet can make use of them when it wants to. Listen, listen for the silence. It doesn't care if there's sounds or not.